All right, hey everybody, I'm here with my brother, Diakon Zéna Bluy Hadees. You may have heard him if you are listeners of the Tawahado Bible Study, as he interviewed our father, Mamhir Gabra Selassie, one of probably the last long-form interviews, if not only, we really have out there recorded of him. If you haven't heard that, make sure you go back and listen to that. Now we're here on a totally different subject. Of course, he's a super deacon of two different adbar, or two different parishes, and he's also studying engineering, and he's also one of the greatest smoothie makers you've ever seen this side of the Mississippi River, or the Nile River for that matter, which right now is in dispute with our brothers and sisters of Egypt. But here we're here to talk to him about a totally different matter. He's also a hustler and an entrepreneur, a self-made car fixer-upper, let's say. I don't know. We could ask him for a better term. Is there a better term?
No, that's a good term.
All right, a car fixer-upper, as well as a car purchaser and a car salesman. So wherever you want to begin, if you want to begin in fixing cars, or if you want to begin in your experience in purchasing and traveling to purchase cars and then trying to sell them to folks, let me know. Any of that life cycle, I think, will be very interesting for people.
All right, definitely. I believe, God brings us through His grace together and to do things that we love. And as a child, I always loved fixing things, and I always enjoyed, making things, work again if they're broke. So that developed into fixing cars. One of the things that fastened that development was that I took my car to a mechanic one day, and he tried to hustle me, out of, try to charge me a lot of money for something simple. Yeah. And then I got angry, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna do myself, and I started doing it. Went to classes, to school, took classes of mechanic classes, and I started fixing cars. And after
where'd you take mechanic classes?
First one was when I was a senior in high school. There was an ROP program that we had, and through that I chose mechanic program, and it was really good, And we went to a shop.
Like that.
Yeah. You go to a shop and you fix, cars.
So you weren't. So this is a point I emphasize a lot. There's some point in Hebraic thought that is different from Roman and Greek thought, and that is, I think, a huge difference. So the armchair philosophers, whether they're metaphysicians, metaphysicists, or whatever, ethicists, they try to take abstract theories and they apply them to real life. And they run into a lot of errors because those things aren't grounded in anything. Now, there's a proliferation of this experiential learning movement. Like, for example, when I was in law school, my favorite classes were the clinics, where I actually worked in the courthouse. Not where I sat in a chair and said, what would it be like to make peace between these people? But when I actually did the work. So the way you're describing it, it's not like you sat in a classroom and said, how can we fix a car? It's that you actually used your hands to work on them. And so you took the grounded reality, the practice, you were a practitioner, and then you made theories based off of that. Or your practice was motivated by the things you actually did, not things that you just think about in advance.
Yeah, pretty much. You have to get your hands dirty, but at the same time, planning is very important. You have to be like, if I fix this, how do I go this way? And thank God to YouTube, there's a lot of, you see other people make the mistake before you do the mistake, so you learn from their mistakes.
That's right. So you used YouTube in your learning as well, in addition to starting in high school and taking the other courses.
Yeah, the University of YouTube is a very, very important part of mechanical life right now, and it is also a very helpful
We're
doing an interview, yeah.
I don't know. Katal.
So we fixing cars is very like I said, YouTube is very important for we're doing car interviews.
The University of YouTube is also where this is going to be deposited, so that people will have this opportunity for shared learning.
Okay.
Wikipedia, as many people make fun of Wikipedia and people make fun of YouTube, I think that, you know, those people tend to be too elitist, because these are opportunities for people who maybe don't have the wealth and resources. You know, I think you were experienced during the lockdown. You didn't have a computer for a while, and you had to have access to the computer lab to go there. A lot of people, their only access to computers is from the schools that they go to or from the public libraries. So if and when they have access to Wi-Fi, maybe from a library or somewhere else where it's shared, or if they have some other subterfuge ways of how they're getting there, you're able to access all this information that ages prior to didn't. So, you know, YouTube is a legitimate university. I like how you said that. It's a decentralized university.
Exactly, it is, you know, free, and it's one thing I love about it is I hope it's private, you know, it's it's not government owned where you have to, you know, suck at it. But the beauty of YouTube is anybody can go in there and look for what they want and can do good or bad with it, just like the internet. But yeah, with going back to the car thing, something actually that I learned from cars that I applied to my life is that just like an engine, there's many parts in an engine. There's a battery, there's a chain in the engine, there's a small wire called grounding wire. And if that small wire or if that small bolt is not working properly, the whole car is not going to work. So a car is run by many, many things, and it doesn't only take one thing, but many thousands of parts play a role in making that car go. And something I learned in life is, in our life, that brought us happiness, and our social life, our church life, it doesn't take one person, you know. It takes many people working together as one unit, making that whole one unit, obviously, at the end becoming Christ. But we all work as units, you know, and we all play an important role. It doesn't matter how small or big it is, because the smallest thing has the biggest role sometimes, and the biggest thing has the also a role in it. But something I learned from cars is that many things come up to make one huge car run, and working together is a very important thing, you know, like peacefully and harmonically. And that's something I learned about cars. And so that love drove me to share, you know, that experience by selling cars, you know. How I got started was a long story, but you know, I like to own my own business. Mm-hmm. So I kind of fix cars and sell cars. I buy cars from different states and bring them here, and you know, that's like a total the love I have for cars, you know. So
what's like one of the states that you've traveled to and then gone back to? Because that's one of the more interesting stories you shared with me off camera.
Oh yeah. One of the states I went to was Oregon, Portland. I had a car. It doesn't have a license plate. It doesn't have the back wheel was broken. I can only drive 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So I drove all the way from Portland to Los Angeles for about 4 days. Of course, I took rest in motels. And it was a long trip. It was a very interesting, beautiful trip. You know, thank God I wasn't stopped by any police. But of course, I had a paperwork from DMV to allow me to drive without a license plate from one state to another.
Yeah.
And that was one of the...
And did you have to take the streets, or were you able to take the highway only traveling 40 hours? I imagine people would have been pissed off at you and like honking their horn.
Oh yeah. But you know, I put my emergency light on, and I learned to have patience through that trip, because I can only go 40 miles while everybody's going, you know, 80. Yeah. Passing, you know... I kind of realized what it feels to be like, you know, maybe, you know, to go slow while everybody's passing at you. As long as you have patience, you'll get to your destination. It's not how fast you go, I guess. It's, you know, don't give up, you know.
I like that. No, even when you're talking about the pieces earlier, a point I raise in my Toledo Bible study a lot is the idea of functionality, that every piece has its function within either the part or within the whole, and then together there's, you know, a new entity that's there that is greater than even perhaps the sum of those parts. But now you're even talking about these practical lessons that you're able to get from driving from Portland to LA at 40 miles an hour with people honking at you with your emergency lights on.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it brings to mind is you gotta be, like you said, someone who plans ahead, someone who's mission focused to be able to do that, because that's no small cost to yourself. You said 4 nights in motels or hotels or Airbnbs, and then the time spent to travel there. Did it end up being worth it in the end? Or like, is there like an intermediary period, an intermission or a middle point in which you're taking a loss before you start seeing the profits in this line of work?
Yeah, you do have to calculate. What's my how much is it worth to go there and bring that car and fix it and sell it, and how much what's my profit? You have to definitely think about that. But at the same time, for me, profit is not just money, but the trip itself is a profit for me. Going over there, meeting new people, seeing new places. I see it as a profit and as a vacation, and I put that in my calculation. And also, when I finally get my profit income, that is calculated in there as a vacation, as a trip, and that definitely brings happiness to my. Actually, one of the reasons I do it is actually to just travel, to go there and bring a car here. And sometimes I lose, sometimes I win, but so far it's been a win-win, because of the trip. I think back at it and I'd be like, the night I spent in the motels, the 6 motel, but it's a beautiful. I love doing this. You know what I mean? You got to have the love first of all. If you have the love, that's the profit itself. You're doing something you love. And the money is a bonus. It's a tip. But I do get a lot of bonuses in this business. So
yeah, one of the things from traveling back and forth between Ethiopia and the United States a lot as I was a kid that I learned is this difference between parts and service or labor. And I realized in the United States, labor is valued very high. Part of that is some of the bureaucracy from the government that comes, and part of that is the certain quality of that labor. But the parts end up being relatively cheaper because of, again, maybe more subsidies and more industrialization, things like that. When I would go to Ethiopia, what was weird to me is like the imported clothes and parts and all these things, they were more expensive than in America. And I was like, what's going on? But the service was dirt cheap. Just as a silly example, I got my hair braided in Addis Ababa for the equivalent at the most expensive place of about $5 US. In the United States, to get my hair braided in the same way, it was $65. You know what I'm saying? Those are way different, right? In terms of service or labor cost. But the parts, like the same PlayStation that I bought in the United States, was more expensive in Ethiopia. Yeah. And so what's interesting about your journey is that when you're calculating your profits and losses, as any good entrepreneur does, and as an aside, you seem to have the heart of an entrepreneur. Gary Vaynerchuk often talks about people who are not in it for the right reasons, and they're the ones who are going to quit. Just from hearing your testimony today, I feel intelligently, I think I could guess that you're going to be in this game for the long haul. It's not just like you're here for a gursha or a little bite. But the interesting thing about your calculation of profits and losses is that you have fun traveling. You have fun driving. You have fun being in different cities and towns, seeing locales. And so for you, the labor part that maybe other people would calculate differently, and this shows the subjectivity of that, the labor part, you get to decide what that is. You determine what your labor is worth. No one else decides what your labor is worth. And then the place that's a little bit more objective is what do the actual parts, like whatever you needed to do to fix the car, whatever the license plate costs, whatever the registration in the different states DMVs, whatever the actual price of the vehicle itself was. And so that's interesting that you get to play with it maybe in another way where people would stress out and freak out, just like certain people are doing during the pandemic. Your point of view, your perspective affects the way even that you will do business.
Yeah, definitely. And that's where the love has to come in there to help you push you through that hard times and that stressful times. don't get me wrong, I do get stressful at times, but the love does push me, take a break, and yeah, I keep going.
Do you have any advice for someone who would want to begin either the purchasing and selling of motor vehicles, of cars, or of getting into mechanical work? Like, if they wanted to get started, what would you tell them? If they were in high school, or even if, they were in their 30s?
I know a guy actually in his 50s, even it can be 60s or 70s. This is actually almost like a hobby if you love it, I also know people who went into it just for the money's sake, and they get burnt out really quick. Like I said, the traveling, the whole. If you don't have the love for that, you're gonna get burnt out. So, first I'll say, if you love it, just do it. Go start it. Of course, do it with planning. Don't just jump in it. Plan it. Do a research on it. But get it started at some point. Don't be scared, and don't do too much planning, because too much planning will ruin the fun. But pray about it. Ask God if it's His will, and I believe in my heart this is God's will for me to do this. And if it's His will to do, for you to do this, then just get it started and do it. With anything, it could be being a lawyer, or a pilot, a doctor, or even a florist, an artist. It doesn't matter. Just whatever love you have, pursue it. But also, you just have to have that little planning of course, you got to have the money to travel, And where do you get that money? You have to work. And if you can put work and fun together, man, you're in the right place. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Diakon Zéna Bluy Hadees. And he's taking his time right now in studying Maz'af Kufali, which is the Book of Jubilees. For those of you who don't know it, typically the Protestant canon has 66 books in the Bible. Some of the Orthodox and the Roman Catholics have around 72. The Ethiopian Church specifically, not even just our Afro-Asiatic communion, which includes the Copts, the Egyptians, and the Syrians, right, and the Armenians and the Indians, we have 2 books. The one I'm named after, the Book of Enoch, right, Maz'af Henok, but we also have Maz'af Kufali, the Book of Jubilees. So right now he's taking his time studying it, and when he's ready, we're going to begin delving into it in the Tawahado Bible study, as well as in the YouTube program as well. So thank you all for joining us, and have a blessed day.